All right, now this is an interesting one, and I really do think that this is worth talking about. Maybe not for good reasons though. Mike Coppinger, according to him, Lawrence Okolie. Remember Lawrence Okolie, former cruiserweight, and I really don't like counting it, but I mean, I guess it's well, BoxRec I don't think counted, but former bridgerweight world champion. Yes, that division, the division in which the heavyweight champion of the world comes in under. Believe it or not, Alexander Usyk, that division. The former cruiserweight champion and bridgerweight champion Lawrence Okolie, who made his debut at heavyweight just before Christmas. And honestly, I mean, I still couldn't believe how much he was weighing on fight night, 260 odd pounds. It was a it was a sight. But nevertheless, Okolie still has a lot of power. He is campaigning now at heavyweight. He's looking to make a run at heavyweight. He's looking to become heavyweight champion, and he is highly ranked by the WBC. So with that in mind, you'd think, all right, who is he going to fight next? The guy he fought wasn't particularly good. Are they going to try and? Are they going to step him up a little bit over that? And well, according to Mike Coppinger, Lawrence Okolie versus Luis Ortiz. Luis King Kong Ortiz is reportedly in talks to take place at heavyweight, a clash in the UK. I'll see if Coppinger, because I'm reading that off the Ring magazine, I'll see if Coppinger has any more on it. Former cruiserweight champion Lawrence Okolie now campaigning heavyweight in talks to fight Luis Ortiz in the UK. Sources told ESPN Ortiz, 45, returned last January, and that's January of 24, in the Shake Off the Rust fight. Well, he's not had one since then, so the Rust has well and truly come back on, the Rustmobile. It was his first fight since his competitive loss to Andy Ruiz in 22. And if you look at the resume of Luis Ortiz over the last few years, well, there's literally, he returned that was in Colombia, that fight. He was 258 pounds against the guy with 18 losses. Lost to Ruiz. It was a competitive fight in 22. I mean, I remember he was down a couple of times against Charles Martin. Do you remember that fight? That was on New Year's Day of 2022. Flores and Wilder. Ortiz's career the highlight really was the win. I mean, what win was better? Is Charles Martin his best win, or is it Brian Jennings? Because who was Brian Jennings really beat? He beat Mike Perez, Brian Jennings, and he beat Abdu Salamov. No, that wasn't even him. That was Mike Perez who beat him. Who else is Brian Jennings? Brian Jennings doesn't have many crazy good wins on his resume, and they're probably the two best wins on Luis Ortiz's resume. Maybe Tony Thompson as well. But that's literally it. Dave Allen, Kajanu, Kaufman. These guys are nothing to write home about. And Luis Ortiz, the running kind of gag throughout the course of his career was that he's way older than we all think. And listen, Luis Ortiz was a guy who allegedly was born in 1979. And this is a guy who said years ago that he watched Muhammad Ali fight live. Well, Muhammad Ali had two fights post 1979, one in 1980, one in 1981. The very notion that you'd even remember that is sus. So I reckon if he's 40, listen, being a 45-year-old heavyweight, that's not good, right? That's not good at the best of times. But to even think Luis Ortiz is 45, that's being very generous. I reckon he's well into his 50s now. Well into his 50s. I mean, 45 years old, and we don't even believe that's his real age. He's got to be in his 50s. Has to be. As I said, Ortiz a decade ago, and even then he looked an old man. A decade ago was somewhat useful. You liked what you seen. I personally thought he could have done something. He went from Golden Boy to Matchroom, didn't really do anything, and then went to PBC to fight Deontay Wilder. And like most fighters who join PBC, he's done very little since then. He's made some money against Charles Martin. I think that was a pay-per-view as well, that Charles Martin fight. I'm pretty damn sure that was actually a pay-per-view. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I'm fairly sure that was actually a pay-per-view. Shameless by PBC to put that on. It was in Florida. It looked half empty. I remember it well, actually. I remember the fight well. But yeah, I think they even had to do it slightly earlier in the evening because more people from this side of the pond were apparently going to watch it. Yeah, that's who they're talking about, Okolie going in there with next. And listen, Okolie, I understand that. And listen, Alexander Usyk did it. Well, he didn't do it to the extent of this, but plenty of fighters have done it. They've gone from heavyweight, they've gone from cruiserweight to heavyweight. They've had a couple of easy touches, but this is just surely not. I mentioned Dylan White against Anthony Joshua, and I don't see why they don't just do that fight, because I would be picking Lawrence Okolie to beat that. I think he'll knock Dylan White out. I still am very unconvinced about Lawrence Okolie at heavyweight, to be honest with you. I always said it about him. At cruiserweight, he had physical strength over guys that he's just not going to have at heavyweight. And I know some people are going to say, well, he's weighing in the 260s, and he's even said by his own admission he's probably going to come in a bit lighter next time, maybe in the 250s or high 240s. But nevertheless, I always felt that Lawrence Okolie, he's not naturally, when you look at him in the ring, he wasn't naturally, 260 pounds, he had a bit of timber on him. And I think that if he comes in there against a strong heavyweight, like a Dubois, like a Zhang or someone like that, he won't be able to ragdoll them like he could at cruiserweight. He'll still have the punching power, definitely. But I've always speculated that Okolie's been a bit fragile in the chin department. I mean, he was knocked out in the first round as an amateur by Erislandy Savon. And I think he's held that damage, and he was dropped many times by him in the Olympics as well. I think he's held that residual damage throughout his pro career, and that's why he's so tense and nervous, and which looks to hold, or he did at cruiserweight, when fighters would get close. He's looked entertaining in his last couple of fights, but the level of opponents have been, CBS, you can't compare them. It's just, you can't compare them. So the levels have been very low. Against Ortiz can still punch, but I don't like this fight. I think he could be doing a little bit better at the end of the day. Ortiz, 45 years old apparently, and he's not fought in over a year, and the last noticeable win he had was 3 years ago. Not ideal. Not exactly stellar, really. It really isn't. I mean, if you look at the heavyweight division, because Lawrence Okolie, right, okay, so he doesn't want to fight, a top heavyweight, a top 10, 15 heavyweight. Fair enough. You've more Akaseev there. That would get you a ranking with the IBF, and that's a decent name. It's a former cruiserweight, so it would be like two cruiserweights meeting a heavyweight. It's Kubrat Pulev. There's Joe Joyce as a potential opponent. There you go. Who else? Hughie Fury is still knocking around. I think at this point, Hughie Fury, if you didn't see his last fight, he looked awful his last fight. Arslanbek, Majamov, I think we all know he's been a little bit exposed lately. So there's heavyweights there when you go down the rankings that are more formidable. Tony Yoka is another one, So I think that there is guys there, Cassius Chaney. There's guys there in the kind of lower end of heavyweight that you could probably be. Victor Faust, or Victor Vickhurst as they call him here. He's a heavyweight who's a little bit on the vulnerable side. Normally in entertaining fights. These are guys that I think Okolie could be fighting, rather than Luis Ortiz at this point in their respective careers. They're a lot younger, a lot fresher as well. So Ortiz versus Okolie, I really don't know what the plan is for Lawrence Okolie. I've speculated that for a while with Queensbury. I know Queensbury are starting to monopolise the heavyweight division, so really, Frank is the mastermind behind what Okolie does next. I wonder, will they try and do and set up maybe an Okolie Fabio Wadley fight? If they did, I'd be making Fabio Wadley firm favourite in that fight, to be honest with you. But maybe that's the plan. But yeah, him against Ortiz, I don't much like it. I think that, I get it. You're finding your feet at heavyweight. I understand that. But a 45-year-old in Luis Ortiz, I mean, that's not good, as I said. 45-year-old heavyweight is not good. And the fact that we don't even believe he's that young. At 45? Seriously? No. I don't like that fight. I think it's a walkover job for Lawrence Okolie. I'd like to see him tested a little bit more, to be honest with you. But let me know your thoughts. It may or may not be. It's just talks now. That could all change. God knows how much Luis Ortiz would look to go for, would look to get paid for that fight. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. And until next time, people, I will leave it there. Peace.